lacrosse is one of the fastest growing sports in the country, right? There's no question about it. Maybe in the world, right? With the World Games and everything. How many countries were represented in the last World Games?
So huge. So 60 countries are now governed internationally. And then 2 weeks ago, we finally, after an 18-month bid through the IOC, got provisional recognition. So lacrosse was announced by the IOC as the next Olympic recognized team sport.
How cool is that?
That's really cool.
2 Fridays ago. And so, the Federation of International Lacrosse, on behalf of its 60 participation countries, go through that bidding process. The IOC moves at a snail's pace traditionally, and you have to move up the agenda, and then they vote on it several times through. But what that does in a major way is, like, we're shooting for the 2024 games.
Mm-hmm.
It'll likely be 2028 in LA.
Okay.
Because the host nation gets to effectively choose its next sports. But what that does, more importantly, with that recognition, is it unlocks resources and capital on a pro rata basis for countries all over the world that have a governing body. So it's not going to affect the U.S. and Canada as much, that are already pretty well funded. But what it'll do for, like,
grow the game
England,
like crazy everywhere
Italy
else.
and Australia is all of a sudden those guys who play there don't have to self-fund their participation anymore.
Right.
Well, that would suck, because if it doesn't get to 24, you could play in the 24, but 28 you'll be in your 40s. But maybe there's this graph.
Yeah.
It'll be tough.
I'll have to
No,
do
but here's
whatever
the
Tom
thing.
Brady's doing.
Right.
Here's the thing, though. So one of the reasons why Paul got so much attention is because he got all the endorsements, he got all the sponsorship. He built this huge social media following, YouTube following. He's like the first guy to make $1 million a year playing lacrosse. It was really the branding and
He's
everything.
flush is what
well,
he is.
he figured out a way, because, and Paul can speak to this, lacrosse is an incredible sport and has been for years. And college has really built a following. The Final Four is amazing, gets good attention. These guys become college. Paul was a college star at Hopkins, but then typically those guys just disappear because the professional league, no disrespect to it,
no one's watching it.
It just wasn't branded right. It wasn't promoted right. Not a lot of money invested in it. And guys couldn't really sustain their talents where the rest of us could appreciate it. They're amazing players,
They
pretty
got to go out and get
professionally,
jobs.
but they would have to work during the week and then play on the weekends.
Totally. I mean, think about, you guys were just talking about the Redskins and you had fantasy sports in here, but think about how much players develop and the unpredictability after they graduate from Alabama or North Carolina basketball, Duke basketball, wherever it is. Into your 20s as an athlete, there's so much upside. And in lacrosse, for the longest time, the kind of the peak of your career was your senior year in college. We never knew what pro lacrosse could potentially produce outside of the diehards that would try to scrap to find a game, informally the MLL. So that, what we're doing is bringing exposure to the game. You mentioned branding and marketing. Like, we think that's a huge part of any business, product, or service, especially sports league, is you're trading on attention and entertainment.
See, what Paul figured out is these guys individually, and Paul through his social media and YouTube and everything, he was bigger than, and no disrespect to the team, but nobody really cared about the New York Lizards per se, but they cared about Paul Rabil. Mm-hmm. They cared about Rob Pennell and these other guys. Nobody cared about the Bayhawks, but they cared about Miles Jones. So I'm naming these lacrosse guys, right? Yeah. Because they have huge following, right? And these guys are underappreciated. They're huge stars in college, and then they go into the pro league and, frankly, play in obscurity, right? I think bad TV deals. I think being behind paywalls.
No TV deals.
I think all that stuff was brutal, right? So you guys finally had enough, right? Talk about where you decide. And Paul was multiple MVP of the league. Are you the all-time leading goal scorer in MLL history? He's done it all there.
10 all-star games.
But nobody's paying attention except he's doing his own branding on social media, and he's gaining a following, and he's making a killing for himself, but he wants to grow the game.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. First, I want to give you guys where I've been able to be scrappy as when I was a 22-year-old and about to turn 33 now is like building relationships and just trying to get my foot in the door to be on the Junkies and to get exposure at a Super Bowl party or finding my way into Instagram sports to meet their head of sports team so they can activate and promote my Instagram account. So it takes a level of foresight for any athlete or entertainer to figure out where is exposure. And so where leagues do a good job, especially leagues that are funded and teams that are funded, is they build those relationships organically, and then they invest in those relationships, and they put their athletes in front of their support base. So I've been on this is my third time in studio now, but as I said earlier, I've been listening to this my whole life, and just I think 2 years ago we had AWOD in the net.
Yeah, we
That's
did.
right, that was great.
Super fun.
Yeah, we almost killed him.
It seems like yesterday.
We're not doing that again.
But like stuff like that is where
Can go viral, can get some attention.
You talk about what we're going to talk about, but you also have some fun and you bring light to a game that people aren't as familiar with. And then in that case in particular, it was on brand with what the Junks do. We got AWOD in net, and I shot a lacrosse ball. You guys were like, hey, let him feel the pain.
Right.
And people were like, wow, they shoot it 100 miles an hour, and that's a dense rubber ball. So there's like an entertainment education element to it.
Absolutely.
But what we did, and you mentioned the players, so there's never been a better time for a non-Big Four sports league or athlete to be able to really been because of the curve of social media.
Yeah.
Right.
So
it was perfect timing for you.
Perfect timing for me as an athlete that graduated in 2008 at the cusp of Facebook fan pages. We've talked about this on this show before and how social media helps athletes. But for a league now, the barrier to enter was insanely high because you had to get a network deal. You had to find owners who owned premium venues. That's a big thing that people don't talk about. We see it and we're accustomed to it in the NBA and the NFL because they all own their venues. If you don't own your venue, then all of a sudden you're a low priority tenant on a lease that's probably a college stadium, maybe a high school stadium, or a local like city developed field. So that's not a great experience for a fan or an athlete. So and then on top of it, you have trouble baking out your schedule home and away. And then you go to the network and you say, hey, do you guys have inventory for this? So the traditional city-based model, while it works for the Big Four sports because they're also in 30-plus markets, so they have that national presence. If you're a sport like lacrosse and you're in fewer than 10 markets and you have bad venues you're playing at and you don't have a distribution deal, you're dead in the water.
Right.
So we looked at the opportunity first as, can we approach MLL, work on some type of deal, some version of M&A where we can take the existing assets and reformat the business model. We spent a lot of time with them to try to figure it out, but 9 out of 10 deals in any industry usually fall through, and that's what happened there. But we always knew that there was an opportunity, so we went the route of building from scratch with the best players in the world. And
they literally have the best players in the world. How many agreed to come with you when it was all said and done?
About 160.
Like Jason, I'm telling you, the best players in the world, they're all with them.
How many teams were in or are in the MLO?
9.
Okay, and how many teams are you going to have? 6. Okay, you can have a draft?
We're going to have a college draft every year. So what we're doing, and we're doing team formation. So what we're doing is a 6-team professional league where you have your independent structure from players to head coaches to operating kind of directors of ops and managers of teams.
Okay.
And then you have your training camp, full regular season, all-star break that rewards the top players throughout the first half of the year, playoffs and championships. So all that we're used to digesting in team sports competition is there. But then what we did is looked at NASCAR, PGA Tour, UFC, WWE, even World Surf League, these individual sports that are tour-based, where every weekend all of the best athletes in the world descend upon a major market city.
Same thing happens in tennis and golf.
Same thing happens in tennis and golf. Same things that happens at the Final Four in lacrosse, which is the highest attended event every year, where they have 8 teams across 3 divisions come and play. So you're optimizing for that venue challenge that we talked about already. You're prioritizing network inventory. So we have a deal with NBC. It's a major deal.
How big was that?
That's huge.
You met with all the networks, right?
All the networks.
Was it nerve-wracking?
To go in there and pitch them?
Yes.
Had to have
Are
been.
you such a big silly and you're so confident that you knew you were going to be good?
Just get highly caffeinated.
I might do a shot of vodka before I go in there.
You were comfortable. You knew you had a great product.
Were they sold pretty much from the start?
They're all sold on the sport,